My name is Regulus, and today I'm interviewing Timothy Barrett-Ford. He's a musician. What's the name of your band?
Black Bleeds Through.
Black Bleeds Through. He is an occult practitioner, and his music is inspired by his work. I figured that he'd be a great person to interview. We were just talking a little bit, and he was telling me that he used to work with disabled people, and he's doing music after he had a heart bypass surgery, and we're lucky to have him alive to talk to today. So I guess one question I would have is, how does your, or what is your practice? Like, are you a Satanist? Are you a Discordian? Would you define what you practice?
I'm a little of everything. I started out as Wiccan at 14, and after several years, it just didn't seem a right fit. So I studied a lot of different things. I was a Satanist for a while. Ancient Egyptian religions, esoterica, the Germanic religions I studied for a little bit. But I think what I've done the most is just add everything together and take what really strikes me and use that. It's more of a discipline than a practice.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that, especially when there's nuance to what you've learned rather than sticking to one thing. It tends to be a discipline over practice, but because it's you take away these morals, right? And then like you are like, I agree with this. This aligns with what I believe reality should be, and then that becomes how you choose to live based on.
Yeah. You take the things that speak to you that really hit you, and then you go on to something else and take from that. Because to me, it's kind of all the same. It's just, same old thing in brand new drag, basically.
I mean, it's different cultures too, right? Like all these different places that have these religions, they weren't connected in the past. They were doing their own thing in their own place, right? So it's like you had these different, it's like one tree, but all these different branches are connected through the similar belief systems, but separated by being separate branches, right? Like,
yeah, and there's a lot of commonalities in pretty much everything.
Yes.
So that's that's why I've thought that you can mix and match and deal with what feels right to you, rather than just sticking to one thing and adhering to everything that says.
I mean, that's what I find to be true for myself as well, because like when you're a Puritan and you only believe in one thing, there tends to be the yin and the yang, which we were talking about, where there's good and bad within that one thing. But if you are able to use critical thinking, you can identify the good parts from multiple different sources and then align those in one whole group for yourself internally, rather than allowing yourself to fall victim to the negativity within the differing groups that exist within them. Like,
yeah, that's very true. And a lot of times when you get groups of people together, there is negativity because of the egos and all that stuff. And it's like, shut up, go away. You're not helping anything. Just so I tend to do better on my own.
That makes sense. A lone wolf in spiritual practice.
Yeah, which is kind of uncommon, I think. I don't know.
I think it's more common than we realize. I think a lot of us, like, we see things that resonate with us and we adopt them as part of our like central tenets, but we don't like label it the way that you and I have, like, rationally, right? It's something that people just do subconsciously without being aware of it, because there's a lot of like Buddhist tenets that like a lot of Christians practice without realizing that it's not necessarily a natural part of their religion. It's something that is part of the lifestyle of being a good person.
Yes, definitely. And I've also found that there really are no absolutes. when you put absolutes on things, you're missing the point. To me, that's my opinion of it.
No, I agree, and I study rationality and philosophic truth, and to study there's a systemization of truth where you have to rationalize it through whether or not it's fallacious, and then if you're free from fallacy, then you can begin to unravel what the practice of that truth is, like what it looks like when it's functional, not when it's an idea in your head. So if something that
Yes.
you think is true and free from fallacy applies to reality, then you know it has truth and form and function as well as form.
Yeah, that's the big thing is the truth. What hits you is the truth. What makes you feel that yes, this is right. Because there's a lot of truths out there, and so to speak, and only certain ones hit you as a person. You've got to personalize it to you to make things work, to make it right. That's how I feel.
I agree. I mean, we all have our own instead of us trying to see the world through this is what the world is, it's this is how I see it, right? And that's the best we can really hope to achieve, is because we're not gods, we're animals that became conscious, and in that process we were given the ability to have our own self-awareness, and if we're being honest with ourselves, what we think is real isn't necessarily real for someone else.
That's true. That's very true. Like with me, music is magic. It's the very definition of magic because you're creating something out of nothing, basically, and it's a very natural magic, and that's kind of what I'm drawn to. Not just music, but that type of thing.
Well, yeah,
Rather than, I don't like to dress things up. It just seems to miss the point, and I can focus on my own. I don't need certain little accessories to do what I need to do. Which I got into another subject there, but I'm sorry, but that's a thought popped into my head.
No, it's okay. We're here to share and just be open and who we are naturally, right? That's what this is all. That's what my podcast is about. Is you can't have a deep talk unless you're just sharing your raw truth with someone else. It's kind of how it goes. I was going to ask though how your discipline then affects your music, right? Like, are your songs like a extension of like what you believe, or is it like a message you want to share with people, or like how does your music, what kind of magic is it that you're doing with your music?
Sometimes it's just the entirety of a song. I don't write a lot of lyrics about paganism, if you will, because that kind of limits what you're doing. But it's the intent of what I do. Singing, I'm mainly a singer, and that I kind of tend to want to draw the energies around me into me and put them back out there. So I use that as magic. Sometimes in the past, I've actually written rituals in songs and done it that way. But that was when I was younger, and it's different now. So I'm older. But I have a song from about 20 years ago, a band I was in called Sea of Monsters, and it's Egyptian themed. It's basically if you take the old Boris Karloff Mummy movie, and I made it as a love story instead of a horror theme, and I used actual bits of Egyptian prayer from the Book of the Dead in it. And so I take that energy and put it out there. You can draw the energy in and do whatever you want with it. I'm not telling you this, that, or the other thing. It's just there. You can absorb it or you can let it go.
So the magic for you is a propagation of energy that you've experienced then. Like you're trying to share your experience with other people through your music.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes it's not about the lyrics, it's about the melodies, it's about how you phrase things that helps make it magical, if you will. Once again, back into the no absolutes type of thing. It's I'm putting it out there. You can take it or leave it, and if you take it, enjoy it. Hopefully, it makes you feel stronger.
I hear that. Yeah, not everything has to be like, what's the word? Forced upon people. Like even if you hear something, you have the choice to subconsciously let it pass in one ear and out the other, or you can focus on it and absorb it for what it is, right? Like that's the one thing I've noticed with music a lot. Like growing up, there's a lot of people have a tendency to like just hear a song on the radio. They're not actually paying attention to it, so they don't like actually intuit what is the song is about or what is like happening in the song. They're just kind of like doing something and then that's going on next to them. But if they're paying attention, like if you're sitting still meditating and you listen to a song, you'll be able to hear like the differences in melody versus tempo and the lyrics and what the lyrics actually mean. I think that's kind of a like I don't want to say people do this intentionally because I think it's something that like it's a matter of time and place, right? Like if we're in a space of rest and we listen to a band we like, we're more likely to hear what they're saying versus when we're in a state of action and doing something and the music that we hear is less able to take root within us.
Yeah, that's very true. And I look at things like going to a concert. That's elemental magic right there. That's, giving of energy, taking of energy back and forth. And it's kind of clothed in rock and roll or whatever music you're listening to. And that's something I've always been drawn to, the elemental magic. I have Lakota Sioux ancestors, and I started studying some of that stuff. And it's the same concept. You take what's there. You don't have to try to create something that's not there. You enjoy what is there, and don't screw with it. Don't mess it up.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always thought was magical too, is how like a musician, especially a popular one, can get so many people in a large crowd and they'll like sit silently together in the same space at the same time, waiting for the musician to perform. Like that to me is magical. If you see humans out on the street, like sitting together in unity and solidarity in silence, waiting for something to happen, like
yeah, that's a form of magic. And a lot of people don't realize that sometimes it's the simpler things that are the most magical and most powerful. And that's always appealed to me ever since I was young. Kind of getting to the point of it rather than all the other window dressing going along with it. That's what appealed to me.
That makes a lot of sense. So if you're not like, if your music is magic to you, but you're not like trying to push your magic through your music onto others, you're just trying to share your experience, then is there a clear separation for you for practice, like, or discipline in your personal life compared to when you're performing?
Kind of, but making the music itself is the magic. It's the energy that you create, even when you're not trying. It's there, whether you understand it or not. It's always there. And that's part of the beauty of being a musician. And it doesn't matter what form of music you play or sing or whatever, or listen to.
Yeah.
It's always there for you to absorb.
So I guess what I'm asking then is like, is this energy that's a part of you when you're performing, is that also present when you're like going about your daily life? Like when you drive to the store and you talk to someone at the counter, is that energy still dwelling within you then, or?
Not so much, because when I'm making music, when I'm actually physically making the music, I'm putting myself in there and pouring my energy into it. When I'm at the pharmacy grabbing my medications, I'm not doing that so much.
I hear you.
it's oh, how do I explain it?
So the
It's
practice
just
of
the
creating
magical space you're in.
you're
You're giving a certain type of soul energy, I guess, if you will, for lack of a better term, right now. And you're giving it out, and you tend to get it back from the people you give it to in their form, and it's a give and take back and forth.
that makes sense. I guess so the ritual is in creating the magic, and then performing it is acting out the ritual in a sense, like to
Basically, yeah, because you're grabbing the energy from wherever as a musician and putting it into what you're doing, and then you're giving it back to the universe, to the people, to whatever, to Satan. Who cares? You're giving it back.
Yes. I mean, the only energy I'm giving to Satan is his own shitty energy, personally. Like, oh, you got something bad to say to me? Well, fuck off. Excuse my language.
Yeah. Shove my guitar up here. Anyway.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, so something I've realized in my life is that, like, sharing positive energy creates more positive energy, and sharing negative energy creates more negative energy. So
it does.
through
Yeah,
music,
it
we're
does.
able to amplify that process. We're able to create more goodness through the fact that it's something that sounds sweet to the ears. It sounds good to hear music because it's a repetitive like what's the word, pattern, where
Yeah,
because we're humans, and the way that we identify with reality is through cycles of repeating activity. When we hear something that is like a repetitious cycle in our heads through music, it gives us pleasure and satisfaction because it's like the same, it goes along the same lines of how we perceive the world already.
yeah,
So the amplification of goodness can easily occur through music, just like the amplification of evil can. It's a medium. It's not necessarily good or bad by itself. So how do you think that you apply this like idea to your music when you're creating it? Like,
yeah. And usually it's subconscious. I don't think about it. I mean, it comes out the same way when I do think about it, but it's kind of a natural thing for me. I've done it for so long that you do it instinctively. And like you were saying, I mean, you can listen to somebody like Cannibal Corpse and have all these, you know, negative images bombarding you, but you don't have to take them as negative. You can still feed off that energy regardless of what is being said. You can still find great joy in even that.
I agree. I have a band I like, ICP. They're very well known for being extremely graphically violent, but one thing I've learned
Mm-hmm.
is that when I'm in a negative headspace, being able to listen to that kind of music and have those images gives me the satisfaction of that it's being expressed. It's not that I want to act out on that any of those behaviors. It's the fact that because it's being expressed verbally and with something that I can like see in my head, allows me to transition from that headspace into a new one. Like I don't
Yeah,
have to.
and you can spiritually get rid of that aggression inside you. That's one of the great things about hard rock and heavy metal is that it allows you to just sit there and absorb the music, but you're still getting rid of the aggression that you're feeling.
I
It
agree.
helps lessen that. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about it is that that's what actually happens. You
Like
get rid of it. Like people seeing a circle pit. It's like, oh my god. But they're not really hurting each other, but they're getting out the aggression and they come out of the show, docile, basically.
Well, yeah, but in a mosh pit or a circle pit, however you want to put that, they're all consenting to being in that situation. It's not like somebody like is just being pushed into it and they're all ganging up on them. It's like these are people who are allowing themselves to feel the music and express like a physical action in response to the music in a way that everyone is consenting in. So it's less of a negative thing where a lot of people might view it as like, oh, this is violent and bad. It's not violent and bad. It's a bunch of consenting adults expressing themselves. Is really what it is. Like,
Yeah, it really is. And you can take that lesson and put it in the rest of your life too. It's not just about that or whatever, but you can gain those kind of things from other things. You can gain them from literature, from art. It's all magic. It's all there for the taking.
I agree. That's one thing I've always thought, that we use magic as a word to describe things, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, that's for children, whatever. But for me, it's like we are thinking beings. We have the ability to create concepts inside of our mind and then share that concept through some form of medium in a way that somebody else can interpret it and understand it through their own lens, sure, but it's still being interpreted and understood. That's what I consider magic at its most basic level, is being able to take something that we experience and then share it with other people in a way that they can receive it and understand it. That's what magic is.
Yeah, yeah, and it's non-specific, and I think it helps a lot of people very deeply. It's not always about casting a circle, lighting the right candles, saying the right words, drawing down this, whatever you're drawing down. It's not always about that. Sometimes it's much more simple and elementary. And that's what fascinates me.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have the wrong idea when they try to apply magic to the world around us. They try to say, oh, I'm going to do a magical practice so the universe gives me something that I want. But in reality, we get the thing that we want from living a righteous life, doing the good things. Like when
Yeah,
like otherwise it's taking advantage of other people in order to make them bring the good things we want to us, which that's not magic. I would say that's manipulation. So I think that
oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
magic is
Definitely, yeah.
the opposite of manipulation, and we live in a world, especially like through capitalism, greed is the ruler of our nation. It's what drives us to success. But if you use a magical practice instead of a materialistic corruption, you can then reach goodness through sharing goodness rather than having someone else force you to bring them something.
To me, the greed and the corruption and the hunger for power and all those types of things, to me, that's the absolute absence of magic. They're drawing on something that isn't magic, and it's negative and it's empty and cold.
I agree.
Magic is supposed to help fulfill you and be positive to you. That's how I feel.
I agree 100%. I've always thought it was funny when people like offer curses and stuff through like whatever, like as a medium, they try to offer you the ability to curse someone in your name. I think that's really just them not doing anything real, but making the person who wants the other person to be cursed feel better by being paid. By they feel like something's happening by giving someone money, but in reality, it's just what's it like a mental trick. Nothing is actually occurring that's changing the world because that's not the way magic
Yeah,
works. They're just
that's
being
right.
being made to feel better about their bad situation.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes when people want to, do curses and everything, a lot of times it's because they're weak in themselves rather than standing up for themselves. They'd rather try to get some deity or minor deity to do their dirty work for them instead of just walking up and saying, "You motherfucker, I'd like to slap the shit out of you."
I hear that. Yeah, I've had friends who, they are so full of themselves, they'll try to say what they believe in front of a crowd that's not receptive, and then they'll get punished for it. And then they try to say that the crowd was the one who was responsible for them being hurt, when in reality, they're the ones who didn't read the room and went and said something that they shouldn't have said to people that didn't want to hear it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And I don't normally. express my beliefs that much in public because I don't care if you believe what I believe or not. I believe what I believe, and you believe what you believe, and that's good for you. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind about what I believe. I don't care if you, if
Right.
you believe it or not.
That's actually a common trend. Like out of all the people I've interviewed who practice in one form or another, we all tend to have a solid grasp of who we are and a self-respect that transcends these people who aren't sure of what their spirituality means to them. Like, we know who we are, we know what our capabilities are, and we know we can do anything we put our minds to because we have the magic within us that tells us that we can achieve and accomplish our goals. Like,
yeah, and it's such an ongoing process to sit there and think, well, I've got it all, I know it all, blah blah blah. It doesn't work that way. Magic is something, an ongoing thing for the rest of your life. You'll never get perfect at it. Just like being a musician, it really fits. You'll never get perfect, but getting that information, getting that knowledge is a good thing. It always builds you up, makes you better.
yes, I agree 100%. It's like,
Even negative knowledge can do that. I mean, just because it's negative doesn't mean you have to use it negatively.
I mean, like learning how to manipulate someone, but not using it to manipulate people, but learning to identify when people are trying to manipulate you through learning the manipulation tactics is a very positive example
Yes.
of that. Like, I will refuse to be manipulated because I understand that these behaviors you're using on me are tactics of manipulators. So therefore, I'm going to respond with my knowledge of that directly and cut you off before you even get to the point where you try to make your will more important than mine.
Yeah, that's a great example. It really is.
Yeah, like there's lots of examples like that. Like, and especially in our government, a lot of the time the government will do something that they don't want people to know about because if we did, we'd call them out on how bad it is. But if you have someone that shares that information, and then you learn this negative thing, you're able to then respond to it with a correction. You're able to say, this is not how things should be. We want you to do things this way specifically instead, or at least try other options than that. And it's because you have people who are in power who are used to being able to manipulate others into conforming to to what they want things to look like or how things to be. And
unfortunately, that seems to kind of be the nature of the beast.
Yes.
In politics.
Not just in politics, in the world around us. There's we grow up with the image that the man who owns the house is the king of his own castle, and his family has to respect and obey his wishes. It's not a community. That's not the way the world portrays it. They portray it as the ruler of his land. Everybody wants to be the king of the world, right? Like, that's a common saying.
It sounds really empty, doesn't it? Really empty. I'm this. I'm the king. Yeah, okay, and does that keep you warm at night? Does that make your heart feel good?
What's the value in being the king of everything when you could just be the king of yourself, right? I have perfect control over my own body. That's just what I think supersedes anything, right? Like, I don't need to be the king of my house because everyone else in my house is the king of themselves, just like I'm the king of myself. We share an equal level of respect and tolerance for each other. That's what allows us to grow.
And that's the best way. I mean, sharing, being beings together and creating something together rather than one person dominating, just there's not much that can come out of that. Not much positive stuff.
Yeah, but the creating something as a group, you can make anything that you want. Like, look at how they built the pyramids. People tried to say it was slaves, but in reality, the pharaoh was paying these people top dollar to cut these stones and drag them across the desert. Like,
yeah, and they did such amazing work. It boggles the mind.
Yes, that's a testament to what we can achieve if we all work together through our own will and as a community, rather than obeying someone who's trying to force us to do something, right? Like,
yeah, And that to me kind of goes along with religions too, pagan and Christian. It's us against them, and if you don't believe what we believe, screw you. And that just doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
It creates such a negativity. Share what you've got, embrace what everybody else has, and give of yourself. Don't sit there and say, well, what I believe is the best. It may be the best for you, but it doesn't mean crap to me. I'm not feeling it.
Right.
So,
I think that's like we were talking about, the system of like a lot of us are subconsciously aware. We're not consciously aware that these power dynamics exist in our world, right? So we grow up thinking that it's righteous, it's okay, and it's good to try to control other people to get our way. And in that process, we end up hurting people without being aware of it because we're just trying to do our thing or do what we believe is right. And that process for religion, when you apply religion, puts us in a position where we try to force other people to conform to our values rather than respecting their values as being different. And I think in the United States especially, that's a lesson we need to learn, is that we are all created equal under God. If you believe in God, it doesn't matter, because what it's saying is that we all have our own equal beliefs and equal values. Even if they're different, they're still equal to each other.
That's right. And you really get the sense of that, like I did, working with mentally challenged people, mentally disabled people. They're the same as us. They have differences. They have feelings. They can be assholes. They can be sweethearts. They can be extremely smart in certain areas, but a little less so in others. And watching them, working with them, it's like seeing a microcosm of the world, because so many of them are just pure souls. They don't have their agendas. They don't force themselves on each other. They give and take, and it's such a beautiful thing. And they're not even aware of it, but they are, and I love doing that for those years.
That's another issue for our country, right? Is that we live in a military-industrial society. So what's seen as the moral way to be a good man is to be a sociopath, to be able to separate yourself from your emotions and then like act rationally without considering your emotions or other people's. And when you try to control things, you remove your ability to allow everything to have its place and have there be a place for everything. You're trying to disrupt the natural order. And when you step back and let the universe take control and you just kind of like adjust your own position within it, you can then see where that doesn't add up anymore, where the sociopathic male image is actually a detriment to society rather than a positive benefit.
It really is. And you hear words like collateral damage and stuff like that. It's like I don't want to get anybody pissed off. Well, I don't really care, but I don't want to get people pissed off so much. But the whole shooting with ex-President Trump, everybody's worried about him. What about the dude that got killed? Very few people are talking about him. Yeah. He was whether you believe in his politics or not, it doesn't matter. He was an innocent. He was there looking up to this person that was telling him whatever. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he's gone.
Yes.
So
imagine just going to... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say they're not really doing anything about it. They're not sympathizing with him or his family or what happened. It's like, oh well, collateral damage. As long as the ex-president's okay, doesn't matter who died beside him.
That really just makes you think, if you go to a Trump rally and you get shot and killed by someone trying to kill Trump, does Trump even care about you? Like, but
So far as I know, he still hasn't called the family. And that's the absence of love. That's the absence of magic right there. That's an emptiness, like a void. Like 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 they say Satan is. It's not that way, but that's kind of what it's a good parallel. Like that whole emptiness of love and compassion.
yeah, I
It's
think
empty, it's
that
cold, dead.
I think RFK has a lot of magic then, because like he has good policy when it comes to politics. Like people keep saying this stuff about how he doesn't think vaccines are okay and all this other conspiracy theorist stuff. Like, but in reality, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and just because you disagree with what somebody thinks about something specific doesn't mean they won't be a good leader, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he has started his own party. He's doing his own thing as an independent, and he's got higher pollings than any other independent has had ever. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, how can you sit here and say that you're like basically make up an ad hominem fallacy and say that this person has wrong because of this thing or that thing about their personal character, when in reality, during the presidential debate, they did another one where he was involved, and all the answers he had for it actually answered the questions that were involved in the debate, not like shitting on each other, like mano y mano, like where one, like they literally in the actual presidential debate, they both just shat on each other. They said, you did this or you did that, like pointing fingers at each other rather than actually answering the
Yeah.
questions about what their policy will look like if they become president. And
They're drawing attention away from what the question is so they don't have to answer it. And it goes on both sides. Both sides do it equally. And that's, I guess, is part of being a politician. I don't know. I'm just a ex-bottle blonde rock and roll singer. What do I know? But that's the way it is. And for somebody to come out and actually say the truth, like Kennedy or like Bernie Sanders or people of that nature, that's a lot of people don't like that. They're afraid of that because they've been force fed the lies all these years.
I think what it is a power structure is set to collapse that has been existent for thousands of years. It's a patriarchal structure where we have a bunch of men in power who are very skilled at manipulating other people, so they don't never get questioned or get called out on anything. And in reality, everybody is the people. We've had to get these men in the past to agree to our necessary change as it comes throughout history, rather than just what actually works being allowed to function without being approved by some like authority figure, right? We what we are working towards is having a system that is functional based on this is what works and this is what we can prove, versus like, let me entertain your ego and get your permission, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it bugs me that they work under the impression that we as a people don't know. They're just the unwatched masses. What do they know? I have this power. I know all this. And it's like, wait a minute. Maybe some of us do. Maybe there's people out in the world that just really do, but we're so conditioned to being under the thumb of aggression and money and power that we're used to it.
I think what it is a fear of death, really. Like, a lot of us aren't willing to stand our ground to the grave, right? Like, a lot of us put survival to the point that if I need to change my beliefs in order to continue to live, then I will. And that's what allows these people to manipulate us into these positions, right? Whereas if I said, I will not allow you to violate my rights, and you can put me in the grave if you have to, but I'm going to continue to defend my rights to my death, that's what stops this from happening. That's the reason our founding fathers were able to create a country separate from England, is because they said, we will put our beliefs ahead of our lives. We will live for what we believe is right. And if you think this is wrong, we will die for the cause.
And so many did.
Exactly.
And that's not happening right now.
Oh,
People just going along with the flow and hearing what the talking heads are saying to them, and just okay, that's fine.